Welcome to Varsity House Podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Crawford. On this episode today, we have CEO of USA Track and Field and also owner of Rev Racing, Max Siegel. Max, appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me on here, Shaun.
Very exciting news, in Olympics and specifically USA Track and Field. Track athletes will now be able to be compensated for winning a gold medalist or additionally compensated for winning a gold medalist. Talk about that a little bit and pretty much just how that came about.
Yeah, so the foundation of the Olympic movement was around amateurism, and that has evolved over the years. And so as a federation, we do our part in supporting our athletes, with training grants, some direct financial support, medical insurance, and those kind of things. Athletes also have the opportunity, once they turn pro, to win money, prize money in races. And then a big part of compensation for the athletes, the most high profile ones, are through sponsorship deals. So what we've all been trying to do as an industry is elevate the opportunities for the athletes to earn a living, at the level of excellence that they perform on the track. So, the Olympic Committee has a medal bonus plan in place. And World Athletics, which is our global governing body, has come out to provide additional compensation for gold medalists at the Olympics. And I'm seeing that it gets mixed reviews. However, I'm incredibly supportive. I think we have to evolve as a sport nationwide, and we have to reward the athletes that compete at the highest levels and achieve, gold medal status or medals in general.
Yeah. And I also think, just looking at it, I think it'll help more if we look at some other athletes in the US, NFL players, football players, basketball, NBA players, be more attracted to the sport of track and field when they now start to see the additional compensation, because those same athletes, I'm sure, are fast runners, high jumpers, things like that, to where it would incentivize, an athlete who maybe before would think about playing football or playing basketball, to where it's like, okay, now I could go make that same, or not same, but I can make, just as good a living running track. Do you think, those steps will be taken?
I'm pretty excited right now to see a number of people wanting to get into the industry and elevate the sport. They announced 776 announced an all women's competition where they're increasing prize money. Michael Johnson has got private equity funds to launch a league. As a federation, we'll collaborate with those individuals. But to your point, track and field is a sport behind every sport. You have to run, jump, and throw to participate in sports in general. And I think the concerted effort to try to generate more awareness, reposition the sport, bring revenue into the sport, certainly, in my opinion, will be an incentive for the athletes to train hard and pursue the professional side of track and field as well as they would other sports, whether it's, baseball, football, soccer, or basketball.
Mm-hmm. And now, with such positive news coming, to the sport most recently, do you worry about athletes taking that extra illegal step to receive some of these new benefits? There's, before your time as the CEO, we saw athletes like Justin Gatlin or Marion Jones. What are your thoughts on those situations?
Well, our athletes are pretty well educated on the risks associated with anything that's performance enhancing. We have probably one of the most aggressive drug testing protocols in the world. And our athletes, for the most part, by and large, we all advocate for clean sport. I think it's unrealistic to think that some people who push the limits won't try to get a competitive advantage. But for us, we're really proud of the fact that, we are the number one track and field team in the world. Our athletes, by and large, are clean. They train really hard and are all advocates for clean sport. So, you always worry about someone trying to get a competitive advantage. But the athletes know, again, what the risks are, and they need to take care of their business accordingly.
Mm-hmm. And as a fan, I think everyone comes around this time of year, especially with the Olympics being this year, to cheer on and root for the USA in all sports. And so, in spite of some of just that negative news in the past about some Olympians and things like that, since you've taken over in 2012, you've been able to generate over $600 million in revenue and expanded USA TF annual budget to 40 million. What have been some things that have taken place during your time to this that has helped the sport and specifically USATF grow?
Yeah, a few things. One is we have tremendous athletes that are incredibly diverse, more diverse than any other Olympic sport. We wanted to make sure that the business side of our organization was operating at the highest level in the same manner that our athletes achieve on the global stage. And so what we did was strategically set out to have a diverse staff. We brought people in from a number of different industries, great commercial backgrounds, every single perspective, walk of life. And then we took a look internally at all the assets that we had to sell. You know, our federation governs everything cradle to the grave. So you'll have hundreds of thousands of young people in the Junior Olympic system. You'll have our elite athletes that most people see. There are over 45 million people in the country that run. So the road races, the 5Ks. And then, you know, watching ESPN, you may see an 85-year-old set a record in the 100. So, you know, it is a sport that you could participate in for life. And what we try to do is be incredibly strategic to find sponsors and partners who share the same mission. We were aligned from a brand perspective, and we could give them program support, signage. You know, you could be within our broadcast in terms of commercials and advertising, you know, all kinds of returns on the investment, content, and our distribution on the platforms. So, you know, we just kind of revamped what it was that we went to market with commercially and utilized the strength of our staff, the properties that we own, and just went out there and sell. So we're pretty excited. We brought on 19 new partners that generated a lot of revenue, and it's allowed us to support our programs, whether it's coaches education, officials, you know, the youth space, probably increase support 200 to 300% in every segment of our organization.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Junior Olympics. I ran AAU track, so I didn't grow up running USA track, but grew up running AAU track and performed in the Junior Olympics, you know, during my childhood, but then also in high school was able to run in the Penn relays. And so just being able to have that opportunity to run against, you know, people from the world, it was my mini Olympics, but also to be able to see the likes of a Lolo Jones and some of those athletes just being on the same track was just a very special opportunity. And so I do want to ask, like, as I was coming up in the sport, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, and we talked about amateurism and then turning pro. Have you been able to, now with NIL being a thing and being able to essentially pay amateur athletes, has the USA track and field tested the waters in NIL at all in any way?
Well, we're working closely. So our coaches, and especially the collegiate coaches, belong to the Coaches Association. So we've been looking at collaborating with the leadership. Sometimes if you're in the collegiate system and you're not funded to participate in some of our, you know, competitions, there may be budget gaps, or there may be opportunities for athletes to promote, you know, the sport. So we're looking at creative ways to create a revenue stream for those athletes, consistent with whatever the rules are with NIL, and to really utilize the influence and the popularity of our athletes to market and promote track and field and the organization. So we're in the throes of it. We've been studying it really carefully. We've been reaching out to all of our stakeholders, whether it is the NCAA, you know, coaches, and as you can see, even in high school, some of the athletes are getting younger and younger in terms of representing the brands. But we're right there in the mix with everyone else, and we're trying to figure out some really innovative ways, again, to elevate our athletes and give them the support that we believe they deserve.
Yeah, and especially influencer marketing now, you see it across different leagues. And I just recently saw the USA revealed the uniforms. And I thought that was something pretty new. I don't think you might have done it in the past, but I wasn't aware of it. And being able to see the men's track uniforms go out there, then the women's track uniforms as well, and be put on such, you know, a high stage, maybe than be in the past or before. Talk about that idea and kind of how to the sport.
Yeah, for me, I think you're absolutely right. You know, conversation. It was unfortunate that the piece that got the attention was just one of 50 different selections. I know that our partner Nike works collaboratively with our athletes, with a lot of people from, the design phase, what's going on technically with the uniforms, giving all of our athletes choices and really doing it from a performance standpoint. But the fact that it was a part of the mainstream conversation does shed a light on the sport. I think that we're in a unique position now. Paris is this summer, and then in 2028, we'll have the Olympics in Los Angeles. So especially here domestically, it's a great opportunity for us to capitalize on the momentum that we'll have going into and coming out of the Paris Olympics and get everybody excited in the mainstream, whether you're a track and field fan or not, holding on to the Olympic viewers and really, supporting our athletes all the way through the Olympics in 2028.
Mm-hmm. You just talked about Paris. What does it look like for you as a CEO versus an Olympic year to a world championship year? How do those differ?
Yeah, this year has been particularly busy because typically you'll have the World Championships every other year, the Olympics every 4 years, indoor World Championships. Well, we had indoor Worlds and the Olympic Games this year, plus we had the indoor-outdoor season and our trials. So, making sure that our athletes have the opportunity to train and compete, making sure that we continue with our season, getting people prepared for the Olympic trials. But our delegation that goes to the Olympic Games is about 250. So we have 140 athletes on the team. We have personal coaches, medical staff, support staff that'll be there. So sending out international teams like to World Indoor and the Olympic Games, logistically, it's just tons of moving parts. And so we're really excited about it. I have an amazing team in high performance and that oversees our international teams, and a great chief operating officer to kind of keep all those things moving. But to your point, every one of those years is very, very different. But to have a lot of big events in the same year, it's emotionally draining for the entire staff.
Mm-hmm. And now you mentioned some of the roles that work with you as a CEO. What are you able to go to these events, the trials, the World Championships, the Olympics, and kind of sit back and watch it all happen, or are you still working and moving pieces around?
I wish I could sit back and watch it. I think my family had the benefit of enjoying the competition, but if you can imagine anything you can think that could happen during some length of competition, it typically does. And we're there to be supportive. It's a lot of work for us, whether you're entertaining sponsors, having business meetings with the International Federation, supporting your athletes, dealing with any kind of crisis that comes up, making sure that the families are taken care of, watching the competition for any kind of thing that you need to address. There are so many moving parts. And so for us, I think we don't get very much rest because we have a lot of people that are expecting us to be present at the same time. So you have those moments. I mean, I look back on my 12 years in this job, and there have been some amazing moments that I probably would never have experienced if I weren't in this role. But there are a lot of sacrifices that come along with it, and you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Touch on one of those moments, I guess, in the past 12 years that if someone were to ask you, like, what was the most memorable one in terms of track and field, what would that be for you?
Well, for me personally, we see amazing athletic performances, and there's nothing like, watching a discipline like, if we felt like we need to get better in throws, and then you go see the men's sweep gold, silver, bronze, or Ryan Krauser set a world record, or Sidney McLaughlin, so you get a lot of, it's rewarding when you see all the hard work that the coaches and the athletes put into it, and it pays off. But on a personal note, I look back at a picture all the time when the Olympics were in London, and my kids, were really small. To be able to get them right into the mix on this global stage and to meet all these cultural icons, it was just amazing. And so, there's some personal gratification to it. Athletically, you get to see amazing performances, but it never ceases to amaze me that the Olympic Games are global in nature. So you make friends with people all around the world. And the coolest thing for me these days is whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, technology allows you to stay in touch with people that many, many years ago you couldn't in this way. So those things are constant reminders of what a tremendous opportunity it is to be in a role like this.
Yeah, I even found out. I did a podcast last week at Rock Nation, and they have an office in London, and they actually have one of those virtual doors that you can open up and speak to the people in London, which was like it was mind blowing to me that they even have technology like that.
Yeah.
But you talk about being able to travel everywhere with this job, but you born in Los Angeles and spent majority of your childhood in Indianapolis. Kind of touch on that and just how that's helped you become the person you are, just the Midwest, I would say.
Yeah, I had unfortunately, it's not unique, but I had an incredibly dysfunctional childhood. I was born in LA and my parents divorced. Frankly, I was literally kidnapped from my mother when I was 5 and moved back out west with my father. My father passed away when he was 38 and I was 12. And my younger sister and I, who hadn't seen my mother, moved back to Indianapolis. It was very, very life-changing for me, and not in a positive way. We came back home to tons of dysfunction, a lot of drugs and alcohol. And for me, I craved stability. So early on, being in the Midwest, what I would consider to be a kind of slower town, but growing up in the housing projects, it was no picnic. And so it was motivational for me to try to figure out how I could make my life better. I think being in a town or a city like Indianapolis that's a bit smaller, where people get to know you, I was fortunate enough first with my wrestling coach to take an interest in me and make me believe that I could achieve both athletically and academically. After college and law school, one of another Notre Dame grad, Jack Swerbrick, who became the athletic director, was my first boss out of law school. And so for me, I think the key was to find people who I could connect with, that saw things in me that I didn't even see in myself, and pour into me and give me an opportunity to grow. I later, throughout my legal career and then in entertainment and representing athletes, I worked for Warner Brothers and Sony in New York City. And I grew even more with that, but to be able to bring a lot of the foundational characteristics and principles that I learned, in Indianapolis and at Notre Dame, all those things I feel like I hated while I was in school. They were really a compass for me to kind of try to keep me straight and guide me through, especially when I got into situations or, where I didn't really have a lot of experience. I didn't know what was going on. So having a great solid foundation with really good values, a good group of people that I could rely on really kind of helped me take risks and stretch myself and grow.
I know you mentioned the wrestling coach as you were growing up, but was there anyone, you said you grew up in a kind of a dysfunctional household, but was there anyone close to you that you were able to look to for guidance, for mentorship, while you were, going through probably your most pivotal stage as in high school, and then also deciding what college you wanted to go to?
Yeah, frankly, 2 people. My wrestling coach was also my history teacher, so I got to see him in school. Even at the time where my stepfather and my mother had the desire for me to go to college, no one in my family knew how to fill out a financial aid application. No one even knew what a college application was. I went through the whole, sports recruiting process pretty much by myself. And so my wrestling coach, who was an educator, who was like a surrogate father to me, kind of walked me through those things. It was also at a really interesting time. The high school I went to, there was a lot of racial tension. And so my wrestling coach many years later pointed out that was a really tough time. It didn't even register to me at the time, because we were all expected to just kind of adapt. But when I look back on it in terms of, like I said, giving me some structure and some accountability, but also some encouragement, but to have someone who's in the classroom and with you at practice every day was really, I would say it set my life in a whole different direction, and then going on to college, you start to meet, it's not always a professor. It might be your roommate or a classmate, where you have peer mentors or support groups. But, I can't say enough that during those years, my wrestling coach, and a little bit with the baseball coach, my wrestling coach was critical in my own development.
Mm-hmm. And also, you grew up in Indianapolis. When did Notre Dame become real for you? Because for me, it was just the school that had the gold helmets. It was touchdown Jesus. Everyone knew who Notre Dame was, but it didn't. And I was fortunate enough to get recruited there for football. But that's kind of when it was real for me, when they offered me a scholarship. I never thought I would attend Notre Dame. But for you, when was that moment where it was like, oh, I have an opportunity to go to Notre Dame?
Yeah, my academic and athletic career journey was a very bumpy one, and for me, it's interesting because I was recruited to play baseball at quite a few schools, and my mother at the time had a heart transplant and was sick. And I also was fortunate enough that I excelled academically. So I had a bunch of choices. There was a baseball school out west, but in my mind, I was thinking, even if I got a scholarship to go there, could I afford to fly back and forth and be in touch with my family? There were a lot of Notre Dame alumni in Indianapolis. I was fortunate. I mean, literally in between being recruited and the start of freshman year, I had a broken hip. Right. And so for me, you have to face the realities of whether you're going to even go beyond what you go from being all everything to all nothing. You know what I'm saying? And so, but Notre Dame became real to me when I actually went up on my visit, to your point. And it was the first time that I had really spent a significant amount of time out of my comfort zone in Indianapolis. And the campus was magical. The people that I met were really, warm and welcoming. But to your point, going to the football game is it blew my mind. And to come back home and really have the opportunity to go to a school of that caliber, being far enough away from home where I felt independent, but close enough I could get back and forth with my parents. It was hard to process. But I went there and I think, for me, you experience a lot of ups and downs in school in general, but it was life-changing for me. So I am truly grateful that I had the opportunity to go there for law school as well.
Mm-hmm. And I want to touch on law school just because you did something amazing. Obviously, you were the first African American to graduate with honors from Notre Dame Law School, and so I feel like you were never satisfied. To not only go to Notre Dame but then go to law school and then achieve that accomplishment at that time. Where did that I guess I want to say, where did that drive come from? Because at this point, some people could have been satisfied with going to Notre Dame and just, stopping there and going into, business career or anything after that. But you were like, nope, I'm gonna go to law school. And then I'm also achieve in law school at another level. Where did that drive and just that commitment, I guess, come from? Or was that maybe developed, throughout college and your time at Notre Dame?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that. I actually, two things. One, early on in life, I did not have a sophisticated vision other than, I don't want to worry about whatever the case might be, what's going on in the household, being snatched out of bed, whether you have food to eat. And so I worked and I really sat down and had to talk to myself to say, hey, what are those things that I need to do to make sure, first and foremost, I can have a better job or career opportunity. And over and over and over again, just really excelling academically and giving myself some kind of competitive advantage drove me to want. I love learning, but it drove me, from a competition standpoint, saying, how can I separate myself from most of my competition? I got the wind knocked out of me quite a bit early college days. Academically, it was tough, even though I excelled in high school. Athletically, did not turn out the way that I wanted to. And I kind of graduated from college not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I got a job, took some courses at graduate school. I was at General Motors and decided to go back to law school. When I made that decision, I said, look, I'm going not to get the degree. I'm going to try to become one of the best lawyers I could possibly be. So I think my mindset was completely different. I treated it like a job, and I didn't go read my assignment. I tried to figure out literally every day throughout law school, what am I supposed to be getting out of this case or this assignment, right? And I could feel the growth over the semesters. You don't really feel it on a daily basis, but I could kind of feel what was going on. The reward was it started to open up opportunities for clerking at great law firms, being in sports and entertainment, and those kind of things, which reinforced that quest for me. But I say it all the time. Law school for me did a whole lot. Grading is anonymous in law school. So I went to law school. There weren't very many people of color in law school, and you're there with other students whose fathers and mothers are judges and business executives and doctors. And so, as a minority and someone that didn't come from a professional family, it's easy to say, hey, I don't even know if I belong here. And so at the end of my law school career, to find out that I graduated with honors, I mean, it's a tremendous honor, but it gave me the confidence saying, hey, it didn't really matter where I started. I could compete with some of the greatest people in the world. And so it was life-changing in those two ways. But, I feel like, if you get complacent, life passes you by. Another motivating factor is not just achievement, but I probably feel like, since I've never really had a safety net, never really had anybody there to catch me, the fear of failure is always motivating. Like I can't fail. I don't have anybody to depend on, and people depend on me. So it's both aspirational, which is offense, but then it's the fear of failure, which, playing some defense as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask this question because it's just kind of something that I went through when I finished up at Notre Dame, and I had a quick opportunity in the NFL and was able to play with the Raiders for a little bit of time. But going to college and playing football, and I think when you get to that stage, you probably expect like the NFL is a sure possibility. Obviously, things happen and the percentages are the percentages. But being able to start at Notre Dame and play that much at Notre Dame, the NFL is a good possibility for pretty much any athlete there. And so I want to ask, like, did not being able to play sports in college be due to the injury and obviously, not choosing to go west for baseball? Did that help you post college when it came to a decision, or even post law school when it came to a decision to where it's like, all right, I need to, obviously sports isn't going to be my path. I need to fix and I need to figure out what I want to do next, because I think that's something that maybe athletes struggle with, to where we've played this sport so many years in our life, pretty much our entire life. And then if that professional level doesn't work out for us, it's like, what's next? And it's kind of hard for, athletes to pick up and move on.
Yeah, I believe if you are elite at any part in your career, especially high school, right? If you look at the statistics, even to be able to play at or have a college interested in you, you're elite. Okay. I think that when you have that kind of mindset and you excel and you work hard, no matter when that transition happens, it's difficult. But to your point, the higher level that you play, the transition post career is even harder, because it's, you go to college and it's a whole nother level. It's a bigger stage, but it requires more time and commitment. It takes a big part of your life. It's what you do. It's how you, it's your identity. And so some of my closest friends, my best friend in the world who played basketball at Notre Dame, played, in the pros afterwards. Everyone goes through that kind of transition at a different stage in life. It kind of helped me, as I was friends, help them talk through it, because it's never really easy. But one of the things that that never left me, that I don't think that many athletes really appreciate. It's hard to think about your career after athletics when you're caught up in it, because it almost feels like you're giving up, right?
Right. Yeah. You want to stay locked in. Right.
You don't want to have that discussion, but it's also the time where you have the most opportunity to build your network. You're in a high profile position. That's when you need to be thinking about, like, how do I use this platform to position myself when my career is over athletically, no matter when that is. It could be now, 5, 10 years from now. And that's hard to think about. But what it forced me to do with my kids, my son, I was like, listen, football, is a part of the journey. Football, you need to get everything that you can out of that experience, but understand that this is just a part of life. And the same, my daughter's plays Division I college volleyball now, and so I think being able to talk to my athletes here at USA Track and Field, being able to talk to my kids, uh, perhaps makes them think about it a little bit more. But that transition is difficult. It really is, no matter when it is. But the reality is, it's not a bad thing, but it's going to come to an end at some point in time. So the people who are, strategic will start to figure out how you leverage that platform while you're active in sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned that luckily pretty quickly, and I was like, you know what, I was at Notre Dame for 6 years, just due to injuries, but what I thought was, at that time, just like unluckiness. I just ended up using it to where it's like now I have 6 years worth of, or maybe actually more, years of graduates from Notre Dame, kids that I play with. Like there's kids there now that I've played with that I can reach out to, and obviously with this platform, be able to connect with them, and then also guys who are 4 years older than me, 5 years older than me, be able to connect with them as well. So the network and piece, I'm all with. I'm definitely on it, on the same pages there. And you talked about being a minority in law school, but you're also a minority in the NASCAR industry. And so I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because we talked about just in terms of law school and relating it. You were in class with some people who had judges as parents or lawyers as parents, and weren't many minorities. And I'm sure there's very similar in NASCAR, not many minorities in that industry. What were some trials you faced there, and then what were some ways that you worked through those?
Yeah, so I represented the late Reggie White, Hall of Fame football player, who was one of my best friends. I was his lawyer and his agent, and we shopped him around, and met a bunch of owners. And Eddie DeBarlo once told, who owned the San Francisco 49ers, Reggie, if he wanted to do something after playing, reach out to him, which we did. And so Reggie White, Ronnie Lott, myself, and Mr. DeBarlo were going to buy a NASCAR team. Reggie had retired down in Charlotte. Became real close with Coach Gibbs. Joe Gibbs owns a race team. And so we were going to be the first majority owned race team. And Reggie passed away. But what we discovered was it's a tremendous industry with a lot of opportunities that our community wasn't accessing or didn't know about. So fortunately, I was hired to be the president of a franchise, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Been working with the team that I own for the last 16 years with the industry, trying to diversify it. And what I will say is, it was new, it was novel there, and I don't think that everybody embraced it at first. But I had Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is the most popular driver in the sport, who's like a brother to me, really support me. I think that for me, authenticity is important. People need to get to know that you're authentic and you're real. I was surprised because I found that in that context where everybody's focused on winning races, going faster, passionate about the sport, for a moment in time, you forget about everything else, including race. So you get to start to have conversations with people about what your passions are, what you're interested in, the things you have in common. Yeah, I mean, I have and continue to meet my challenges and the resistance to it. But at the same time, I've watched over the last 20 years the industry start to evolve and grow. And how do you get through it? You get through it, frankly, by surrounding yourself with really good people, some people who have credibility in the industry, people to help you run your business. And then you've got people who support you emotionally and professionally. So I've had a good small group of people that have collaborated with me, that have supported me. And now you see some, some of the sport's biggest stars: Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson, Daniel Suarez, Nick Sanchez, Raja Caruth. They all trained with Rev Racing, our race team, and came up through the ranks. And Nick is still driving for me in the truck series. So it's exciting to see that. A lot of work to do, but really, it takes a long time to change a culture.
Mm-hmm. You've done a lot, you've seen a lot, and you've accomplished a lot. I do want to ask you, to date, what would you say your greatest accomplishment is?
Being married for 30 years and raising 3 fantastic kids, in my opinion. There's nothing more rewarding than, all the love and compassion that you pour into your children, to see them be able to follow their passion and thrive and achieve. So being a dad is my biggest accomplishment, and probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm. I will say I reached out to Max Jr. to kind of get this initiated, and just playing with him for a few years. I just see the type of guy he is. I see where it comes from, and so and that's unique about the Notre Dame locker room, to where from the walk on to the starting quarterback, everyone's the same. And I think you get you go very far with being able to be around people like that. And so this opportunity, I really appreciate it. I obviously know you're a busy man, and I thank you for your time. My last and final question is, I ask every guest this: if there is one guest you love to see on the podcast next, but you have to help get them on, who would it be?
Ooh, I think. Well, I think I have 3, frankly.
Perfect.
3 that I would love to see on here. If you haven't, Pete Bavacqua, who's currently the athletic director. Pete and I worked together for years, was a chairman at NBC Sports. Max is at Georgetown Law School, because Pete played football at Notre Dame and then went to Georgetown Law School, is on the board. Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, who's on the RISE board with me too. He is one of the most fascinating human beings that you ever want to talk to. And then, frankly, I think someone who brings a whole lot of sports, civic, business expertise to the podcast would be Troy Vincent, another good friend of mine. So those would be some great guests for you.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to make those happen. I appreciate you. I'm definitely going to be tuned in, throughout the Olympics, and then also the trials as well. I love what they have going on out there in Eugene. And so, again, appreciate your time, and thank you for just being so open and, telling me a little bit about your story.
Thank you. I appreciate being on here, and whatever I can do to support you, let me know.